Don't forget, like I said yesterday, this left half still hasn't changed. Still part 4 today, still exam Friday, but the homework portion has not been updated. We have the part 3 homework due tonight, part 4 homework due tomorrow night, last half of the discussion due Friday. So what were we up to last time? Last time we were working on part 3, which involved adding a bunch of input cells that allowed us to essentially filter all of our calculations down to like a specific gender age combination. And that allowed us to update a single table instead of having 50 different tables all over the place, which is definitely preferred since it takes less time and less space. It's easier to find things. What we're doing today is actually quite similar, adding some sort of new criteria to our averages and counts. But today it's just a little bit more convoluted. So I wanted to start this with you. So today, instead of filtering our data down to like a specific gender or age, we want to filter so that we're only including what the book calls high quality responses, and we want to exclude the low quality responses. So what is a low quality response? Well, a low quality response is any response in the survey that meets one of these two criteria. So for example, if they put a 3, 4, or 5 for concept 7, specifically concept 7, then we're essentially just going to throw away all their answers. Concept 7 was this caffeinated hamburger meat. You can think of it almost like a control group under the assumption that no one really wants this product, and only the people that were excited about it really didn't answer or read the questions, and they were just putting down numbers. And so like if someone was really excited about that, we're going to assume that they weren't really paying attention. We're just going to throw it away. So that's one criteria. The other criteria is that there were these 21 questions, right? There was these 7 questions here for purchase intent. There's another 7 for uniqueness, another 7 for frequency. If they failed to answer any one of those, we're going to throw away their responses. Okay, how do we do this? In other words, we essentially need to test for the opposite of this, right? Because remember, when you're programming your criteria, you tell the average if or the count if, you tell it what to include. So we need to tell it to include any response or any person that put a 1 or a 2 specifically for the intent 7 question. And we want to tell our average ifs and count ifs to only include people that answered all 21 questions. So the first one is fairly straightforward. Let's switch over to our spreadsheet. Our first one is this row right here. So it doesn't matter what part of the table you're in. You could be down in frequency, you can be in uniqueness. Every single average if and every single count if needs to look specifically at this row and this row only to make sure that there's not a 3, 4, or 5, or more specifically, to make sure there's a 1 or a 2. And so that one's fairly straightforward. That's your range, and you're going to be looking for a 1 or a 2. Now, how do I test if they answered all these 21 questions correctly? That's a little trickier. We can see over here, for instance, this person, the 0, they skipped one of the questions. How can I test this to guarantee that there's not any zeros? Well, you could add 21 separate criteria. Test there's no zeros here, test there's no zeros here, all the way down. So every single cell would test that all 21 things had no zeros. That's horrible to type. So here's a better method. What I would suggest doing, I deleted everything underneath frequency 7 because you're not going to use it. What you can do is you can add a brand new row that summarizes if they answered all 21 questions. So I'm not going to show you my code, at least to start, but let's take a look at this number here, this 21. Think about what function could you type here that simply looks at this range? You're going to have to do it one column at a time. So it looks at this column and it says how many of these were answered. What function can I do there? And remember, answered is anything that isn't zero. So how can I tell how many of these aren't zero? Think about that, and if you can't figure it out, I'll help you. And then that function goes here. Once you have that one function for this one person, you're going to drag it right to get the rest of the people. And then going back to your table, once you have this built, this will be your range, and you're going to make sure that there's a 21 here. So like this person in column K only answered 20, so they're going to get excluded. So what I would suggest doing is you're going to take your input cells and you're going to add 2. You're going to check if intent 7 is less than or equal to 2, and you're going to check if they answered all 21 questions. So once again, I have input cells here, so I can sort of turn it on and off at will. To turn it off, same as before, greater than or equal to 0 will essentially turn it off. But if I want to make sure that this is a 1 or a 2, I can simply check if those numbers are less than or equal to 2. If I want to check how many answers they had correct, that's this brand new row down here. I can make sure that there's a 21 in that row. So I'm going to check those rows, and here's the criteria that I'm checking on those specific rows. And there's only one table in the book to check your answers against. So you can use this as sort of a good starting place to check if the rest of your numbers are correct. Here's sort of a weird thing, but if you do it right, all of these will be 125. And the reason why is because one of the criteria was that they answered all 21 of these questions. So the 125 people that did this correctly, that were high quality people here, are the same group of people here. It's the same group of people all the way down because of this criteria where we are forcing them to answer all 21.